the chain is weak, but the meaning of the hadith is absolutely sound. This is well known in the books of hadith, all the great scholars of hadith. Fakhruddin al-Razi, radiallahu anhu, one of the greatest commentators of the Quran, said that the Prophet ﷺ's parents are absolutely najiyani and there shouldn't be any debate about it, and nobody should mention otherwise. And even if it was mentioned by the ulama who did follow that opinion, look how they mention it. I've seen their books. They do it with utmost adab. And most of them will also have ta'wilat, because we know also, according to Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, the great commentator of Sahih al-Bukhari, who believed also that the Prophet ﷺ's parents were in paradise, said that on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, according to several hadiths, the people of Fatra will be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there will be those who pass the test. And he said the Prophet's parents will pass the test. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said about the ayah in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يُعْطِيكَ حَتَّى تَرْضَى, He will give you until you're content. He said it meant your intercession in your family. And the Prophet ﷺ says, who amongst you is claiming that my intercession does not benefit my family? Who is claiming, in another riwayah, who is claiming that my relationship to people does not benefit them? We even know that Abu Lahab, which is mujma' alayh, you can't deny the Quran, tabbat yada Abi Lahab. We even know that according to the Prophet ﷺ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him relief in the hellfire, because he freed a slave the day the Prophet ﷺ was born. Just because he was happy that the Prophet ﷺ was born. Despite the fact that he spent the Prophet's prophetic career harming him. So this is just one example. But these things were known amongst the ulama, and they were known amongst the common people. Nobody would listen to these things 100 years ago. But this is the age that we're living in. It's an age of pamphleteering. It's an age of weekend muftis. It's an age of people giving khutbah that should not be giving khutbah. أَخْطَأَ وَلَوْ أَصَابَ. He has sinned even if his opinion ends up being correct. Because you can be correct if you look at a verse and tell somebody what it means. But you didn't take it from a scholar. You didn't learn it. And ulama can make their own independent interpretations of the Quran. But they have to study. They have to know what was said before. They have to study the Arabic language. And so I really suggest that people, especially those who are in charge of the mosques, they're responsible ultimately before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I feel sorry for the people that come to the Jum'ahs and listen to people that are deviant, listen to people that are astray, listen to people that don't know what they're talking about, and some of them become confused, other ones become angry and resentful because they know that it's not true, and yet they have the adab to sit through, unfortunately, something that is completely incorrect and wrong. But the majority of people are called Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah. And we have certain beliefs that we're in agreement upon. That's called normative Islam. And every religion that is considered a universal religion has that aspect to it. We have a creed. And that creed is what the majority of Muslims follow. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Alaykum bis-sawad al-a'zam." Be with the majority of people. لَن تَجْتَمِعْ أُمَّتِي عَلَى الضَّلَالَةِ. My ummah will never agree on error and deviancy. So we have something called ijma', we have something called jamhur, we have something called muttafaq alayh. This is the scholarship of our great scholars who protected this religion. And the Prophet ﷺ said, يَحْمَلُ هَذَا الْعِلْمَ عَنْ كُلِّ قَرْنٍ عُدُولُهُ أو مِنْ كُلِّ قَرْنٍ عُدُولُهُ. That those in every generation who carry this knowledge are upright and just people. And so it's carried. This is tradition, means handing something on, carrying it on. It's not taken from books. Every book that you study with a true scholar, that scholar has a chain of transmission. He took it from somebody, or he was given permission once the scholars recognized that he had the ability to read books independently, because you can reach a level where you can read books independently. But first, you have to study with scholars. Now there are books that you can benefit in your house. Riyadh al-Salihin was written for common people. And that's why you won't find these difficult hadiths in them. The hadiths of Riyadh al-Salihin are largely hadiths that relate to makarim al-akhlaq. And the same is true, you read the Quran for ta'abbud. You don't read it to derive ahkam, rulings. That is not your business. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَسَرُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people who know when you don't know. It's an obligation to ask people of knowledge. عَلَّمُهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَّةِ. Even the Prophet ﷺ had a teacher. Even the Prophet ﷺ had a teacher. You cannot take knowledge that has any import or weight in this world, whether medicine, engineering. You don't want somebody who wrote books to build a bridge for you. He read books and he goes out and builds a bridge that people are going to drive across. You want somebody who studied in a university with qualified teachers, so that he doesn't do more harm than benefit. So this is very important for people to know. And I really stress that it is the people that are in the committees on the mosques that have to make sure that they are bringing qualified people to speak. Because this is a trust, it's a sacred trust. The mimbar is the mimbar of the prophets. It is a sacred trust. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, very few people, there were only 7 people in all of Medina that gave fatwa. Out of the tens of thousands of Sahaba, 7 people that gave fatwa. Because it's a weighty matter. And asking where the Prophet ﷺ's parents are in the next world is a fatwa. You're asking something related to the aqidah of the Muslims, what they believe. And the same is true for even people who have never heard of Islam. There's people that condemn them to the fire. Who are you to condemn people to the fire? When according to our ulama, even Ibn Rif'a, one of the great scholars, said that there are people on the earth who are kafiru hukman la ma'nan. They are kafir by ruling, but they are not kafir in meaning. And this is what we would call in English a non-Muslim. A non-Muslim is different from a disbeliever. Why? Because it's somebody who's never heard a message to reject or accept. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take a person to account who was never presented a message? And one of the proofs about the Prophet's father, according to Imam Suyuti, is he was only 18 years of age when he died. He had just reached the age of adulthood. And he said he had no time to seek out the truth, even if we are assuming that he was not a muwahid. Because we know that Abu Sufyan fought the Prophet ﷺ for 20 years in battles. And after 20 years, Allah graced him with faith. You think Allah is so unjust that He would not expose somebody to the truth even one time, and that person dies without ever being exposed to the truth, and then takes him to account for that? That is not any understanding of the Lord of the worlds as He presents Himself in the Quran. Allah is just. Rahmati wasi'at kulla shay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Don't set up idols with God once you know. It's called jumla haliyah. In other words, you are aware of what you're doing. So even by that, the ulama said, even the idolaters are not thrown into the fire if they did not receive a message. And some of them said those who are thrown into the fire are the ones who, all of the ayahs that were, all of the hadiths that indicate the people before Islam are in the fire relate to those who introduced these ideas. Like Amr ibn Lahi, the first one to bring idols to Mecca. That's a man, we know his name. He introduced idolatry into Mecca. And because of what he did, he's cursed. That is an opinion of many of the scholars. So this is a very important point, and I hope people reflect on it and recognize the absolute need we have for sound knowledge based on the majority of our scholars. And our aqidah is well known. There are 3 acceptable creeds in the tradition of Islam. What's called the Athariya, which is the creed of Imam al-Tahawi, which is a very simple, basic creed. And then there's the creed of the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. He is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but the majority of people that go under that, who are the followers of Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, and also Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. And this is the overwhelming majority of scholars of our ummah after the 4th century are in agreement on this. And this was what was taught in Al-Azhar, It was what was taught in the Nizamiya. It was what was taught in the Zaytuna. It was taught in Al-Qarawiyyin. And all of the colleges of Islam, all of the scholars of India, whether Deoband or the Hanafi scholars of Afghanistan, of Herat, the scholars of Khorasan, all of them were studying the creed of Imam al-Nasafi. Well known. It's a well-known creed. And so those people that come and suddenly begin to change what was known for the last 1,000 years, in this enlightened period that we're living in, suddenly we've discovered the true Islam. That for 1,000 years the Ummah was in darkness, enveloped in the stupidity of misguided scholars. I mean, that is su'al dhan billah. That's a bad opinion of Allah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر